I have 6 p.m., so at 6 p.m., I call this meeting of Saginaw City Council to order, please. This is a special meeting. We will not have flags or anything. Sorry.
No flags.
I know. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
No invocation, no flags. We're just So, there you go. So welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome the folks watching online. Hope you can hear us and see us well. Please send us a note to tell us how the reception is and if you can see and hear properly. Folks in the audience, please silence your cell phones, devices, etc., so we can have a quiet meeting. I'll do the same. If you have to take a phone call, please leave. Formalities over. Then at 6:01, move us into a public hearing. Public hearing to discuss the proposed 2019 property tax rate for fiscal year 2019-20. For that, City Manager Gabe Rayan.
Mayor and Council, this is the second public hearing regarding the tax rate. For the audience and folks watching, we will take final action on September 17th, which would be action on the tax rate as well as the FY20 proposed budget. Purpose of this evening is to hear from anybody in attendance, their thoughts on the proposed tax rate, not necessarily to debate the merits or other things. I'm happy to answer any specific questions there might be. I'm going to run through a few graphs, and then I'll recommend that the public hearing be open and receive feedback. This is a graph that shows our breakdown of the general fund revenues. So as you'll see, the orange and the blue are the two largest revenue sources, property taxes and sales taxes. Go to the next graph. General fund expenditures. So the city is a business, and our business happens to be serving people. We're not a factory, right? We don't have machines that make things. What costs us money are primarily personnel. So when you look into each of these departments, most of the costs associated with the city's budget are personnel and benefit related. This is a breakdown of where your $1 of taxes goes. You can kind of see it broken down by department for reference. This is all online as well. It's another graphic. So some confusion exists when people get their property tax bill. It's some large amount. The city of Saginaw's portion of the total property tax bill is 18%. So you can see on an average value home this year, which is about $175,000, the average homeowner will pay the city of Saginaw $804 for city services. Contrast that with the most famous Saginaw suburb, Fort Worth. So as you know, we're surrounded by Fort Worth, and there's some streets where one side is in Saginaw, one side is in Fort Worth. An average taxable value house of $175,000 in Fort Worth, you would pay $1,308 in city taxes. So that's a savings of $504. Thankfully, I'm on the Saginaw side of the street personally, and the council is as well. Otherwise, you might not be an elected official here in Saginaw. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions and recommend you open the public hearing.
Thank you, Gabe. Appreciate that. I had a couple things I wanted to add just to clarify some things. There's been a little misinformation going around. I just want to make sure we just know where we all stand. So as Gabe mentioned, the proposed tax rate is 45.9 cents. That's down just over a penny from last year. Last year was 47.1, I believe. So down just a penny. So that's the tax rate. Now your property tax, how much you pay is made up of two things, the tax rate and your property value. Put those together, that's how you get how much you pay. City controls the tax rate. Property value is controlled by TAD. It's assessed by TAD, Tarrant Appraisal District. They do the assessment every year. They're a separate entity than us. So they do that. So our tax rate goes down. So that means, folks, depending on how your property value went this year is what you will pay. If your property value stayed the same, your taxes go down. If your property value went up, you will pay more. Most folks' property value did go up this year. We estimate that most folks will pay, if this tax rate goes through, will pay an additional $4.39 per month, per household. That will be the tax increase we're talking about. $52 a year. So let's also talk about your property. That's if your property value went up a certain percentage. Your property value goes up, what does that mean? Property value increase. Well, A couple things. You have more equity in your home. You have a higher resale value. You are wealthier. Your net worth went up if your property has assessed at a higher rate. You may not want to sell it, and that's fine, but you have the opportunity to do so. So that's what an increase in property value really means to folks. Just take a look at that. You have more equity today than you did 2 years ago in Saginaw. You just do. Saginaw is a very good place to live. Folks want to live here. People are moving here, so our property values have gone up a little bit. As you can tell by all the new houses that are being built, folks really want to live here. So the property values are going up. That means you can sell your house for a higher rate than you could 2 years ago or 3 years ago. You have more equity and you're wealthier. So that's one way to look at it. So keep that in mind. So another thing, our population this year is just about 23,000, probably just a shade under 23,000, which is the most we've ever been. 23,000 folks do need a lot of services, more than we used to when we were a 5,000 person town. Just got to keep that in mind, that we're a bigger city than we used to be, much bigger. We like to feel like we're a small town, and we are for a lot of ways, but we are pretty large now. Over 20,000 is a good-sized town, so that takes a lot of services and a lot of things to keep the city moving. So you're probably asking what you will get for your $4.39 a month. A couple things, and Gabe brushed over these, but I'll give you a little detail. One new police officer, one new firefighter, one new emergency services manager. I believe that's the title, Chief. Emergency management coordinator. Thank you. Run through the fire department. We're actually splitting that duty with Lake Worth, so we're taking a little of the burden off us, doing half and half with Lake Worth. It's a new position. As we've grown, we need that to have our own emergency plans as well. So getting that. We also added a raise for our employees this year, a cost of living raise of 3%. They did not get a raise last year. Folks work for a city are not getting rich. They owe them a raise occasionally, and this was the year to do it, give them a small cost of living raise. Their health insurance went up considerably. So some of the folks will actually get a decrease in salary because their health insurance went up so much. So we felt they really deserved a cost of living raise of 3%. That was certainly justified based on the good work they do. We're adding a new park, adding the Project Greenway Park with All Abilities Park, which is beautiful. We right off Knowles. It's a nice amenity that folks have really been looking for. And that's in addition to all the other services we've been providing. Also, no increase in water or sewer rates. Correct? That's correct. So,
Mayor, we actually have a 5% decrease in water rates. Depending on individual household usage, the savings will vary, but positive.
My apologies. Thank you, Gabe. So that's what you're getting. And as Gabe mentioned, I wanted to point out that our neighbors across the street in Fort Worth pay considerably more in taxes. Not quite double. I like to say, pay twice the tax and get half the services as you would in Saginaw. That's not fair completely, but it's close. City of Fort Worth pays a lot more, and they certainly have a lot to take care of, a lot of big land. So we're very proud of what we provide. So the city's proud of what we provide for the dollars you pay. We know the dollars are important to folks, but we have a big sense of responsibility. So we only raise the taxes for, public service things. Police officers and firemen are very important. We found we were a little bit behind in the number of police officers and firefighters we had. We did give the police officers a bit of a raise a few years ago because we were underpaying. And we also just found we needed more firefighters to keep up with the demand and the growth. So that's my 2 cents. I just want to let everybody know where we were and why we stand behind our tax rate. Other council members want to comment. I'll start over here. Mary?
Just to give everybody in the audience a little bit more information, the 45.9 tax rate was presented to us. That would have not allowed us to make these public safety hires. So we didn't take a formal vote, but the consensus of the council was to raise that to 46.9 to be able to make these public service hires. And then a suggestion was made to see if the staff could come up with some cuts that would allow us to do both. Am I explaining that correctly? Okay. So I was of the opinion, well, that would be a worthwhile exercise to do. Perhaps there are some places that could be cut, that we could make these safety hires that are extremely important, and our fire and police departments will still be understaffed, with those hires. So I thought this might be a good exercise just to see if our staff can come up with some reasonable cuts to be able to do the 45.9. So when that new version came to us, and I looked at what would be necessary to come to that 45.9 cent instead of the 46.9 cent, I did not feel that the changes made were worth what would be between the 45.9 and the 46.9 is for the average homeowner $1.46 per month. So I consider Saginaw a very caring and a very giving community, and that was shown to me very clearly this past week because I decided to do my own survey. No, I was not able to speak to 22,000 people. I wish I had been, and if I had had time, I would have. But I spoke to 21 people, and one of the responders that I did speak to took it upon themselves to speak to 6 other people. And the way I phrased it was just giving them the facts. I told them I wanted them to only answer in the way they felt was appropriate and not to try to determine what I wanted them to say. I pointed out that there was a $1.46 difference between the 45.9 and the 46.9 rate if you had a $178,000 home. One of the men that I talked to had his cell phone with him, and he quickly figured out his house is worth around $250,000, so he would have a $3 increase. In order to get to the 45.9 rate, virtually every fee that the city charges to its residents would be raised. We want to encourage our residents to use our facilities. We don't want to discourage them. These facilities are offered at a reasonable rate so that even our residents that don't have the highest incomes are able to take advantage of those facilities with their families. So the other thing is the animal control adoption fee would be doubled. The tags would go from $3 to $10. A 3-year tag would go from $9 to $30. If your dog gets out and ends up at the pound and you want your dog back, that fee will go from $30 to $40. Second impound fee would go from $35 to $60. Third impound fee would go from $55 to $100. If you want to surrender your pet and your pet is more than 7 months old, rather than paying $40 for that, you would pay $50. If your pet is under 7 months old, you would pay $50 rather than $20. If you wanted to adopt a pet, you would pay $40 rather than $20. Our animal control facility is always at capacity. We pride ourselves in not having to euthanize hardly ever. We still do have to do that from time to time. If we raise all these fees for the animal control, I believe we would have less people adopting. And unfortunately, we would have to euthanize more pets. I know this city is an animal-loving city. I believe it could be in the running for animal-loving capital of the world. Not the nation, not the state, but the world. So I think that if more individuals knew about these increases, they would be quite upset. And I'm afraid if we go with the 45.9, with the recreation fees, the aquatic fees, the summer camp fees for children, anytime you want to rent a pavilion, anytime maybe your organization wants to rent one of the buildings in the rec center or the senior center, those fees are going up. But without fail, every single person I talked to was more than happy to pay that small increase to keep these fees from going up. One person volunteered on their own, I would pay $5 a month to allow our residents to not have to pay higher fees. And most of the people I talk to aren't even necessarily people that use these facilities, but they want them to be available at the lowest cost to our residents, particularly those that don't have very large incomes. So another person said, yes, I would pay $10 more a month in order to keep these rates down. We had a woman come speak before us last week who volunteered that she would pay $100, I believe she was speaking about per year, not per month, to make sure these rates aren't raised. Another way that we were able to come to the 45.9 cent, in addition to raising all of these fees, was to re-estimate revenue that would be coming in. And I believe this was just the very first budget we got. Our very capable and very intelligent and very experienced finance director gave estimates of what our revenue would be in various areas. And two of those estimates were raised artificially in order to be able to get to this 45.9 cent tax rate. I believe that is an artificial and irresponsible way to achieve this rate that we think we are helping our residents. On the one hand, if we adopt the 45.9, yes, you are saving $1.46 per month. But we're taking that right back away from you by raising all these fees. So you're really not, in many cases, saving anything, and in many cases you're ending up spending more than the $1.46 per month if in fact you use these facilities. Another way that we achieved the 45.9% rate was by delaying the hiring of these very safety hires that we need desperately, delaying them by 6 to 9 months. So, in my opinion, $1.46 a month would be less if your house is worth less than $178,000. It would be slightly more, up to $3, maybe $4 maximum, if you have a more highly priced home. So that is why I am for the 46.9 rate.
Thank you, Mary. Cindy?
Pardon me. I just want to add to what the mayor said about what you get for your tax dollars. One of the things that this council has been stressing is we need to be able to give back to the community because we do take a lot of your money in taxes. And so things like the Train and Grain, the movies in the park, the bands in the park, those are the types of things that you get for free. And I think they're important, and I think they benefit the city, and I think they benefit the attitude of our city. And just it's kind of our way of saying thank you for all that you do for us. And since we have another meeting at 6:30 in here, I'm going to cut that short.
Thank you, Cindy. Charlie? You're good? Thank you, sir. Valerie? You're good? Thank you, Don. Mr. Farr?
I just want to comment on a few things. When we began this process back in March, it was made clear to us that we did have needs, particularly in the public safety area. Those needs that were presented to us at the time represented about 8% increase over last year's revenue. I'm not talking about rate. I'm talking about what your property value times the rate generates. That's the revenue. The city does control the rate, but we also control the revenue. That means if we decide this year we want $5 million of taxpayer money to fund our operations, that's what we say, $5 million. The state says how much we can actually raise that from year to year. What we've done in the last 2 years is we have gone to the state maximum each time. This would be the state maximum for the second year in a row if we go with the 46.9% or 46.9 cent rate. I don't think it's fair for us, a legislative body, to tell you, the taxpayer, that you will pay us that amount. I think it is fair that you voluntarily go to the ballot and say that you will pay that amount. There's a difference between volunteering what you're willing to pay and what the 7 of us as legislators will say we're going to take it from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about is we're talking about a body of legislators telling the public, this is what it's going to cost you. Now, obviously, we have to say why we're spending the money and where we're spending the money, and I think there are a lot of valid reasons for raising our tax rate. But let me tell you, community service, public service, and government, there is no ceiling. There is endless opportunity to spend money. We can spend all the money that's in the world. The only thing that we can control here is how much we spend, okay? And sometimes that takes some tough decisions. It really takes tough decisions. My water's edge, as I have communicated to this room several times, is that I believe the 7 of us have the authority to take only so much and only so many times. And if we continue to take the maximum every time we come into this room, what are we telling you? What are we communicating to you, the taxpayer? Now, I'll tell you where we started this budget cycle in terms of the rate. The city manager did come to us with a 45.9 cent rate. That amount was 1 penny more than what I had committed to this council and committed to staff that I would support. 1 penny more. It became clear that there were some things that we were going to have to live without, even to adopt the 45.9 rate. I was prepared to live without those things and still hold to my guns at a 44.9 rate. And that 44.9 rate was actually a 43 flat rate without the tax notes sold 2 weeks ago. So with the tax notes sold 2 weeks ago, where we were at 43, we're now at 45.9. Those two things hand in hand, we've already committed you to 2 cents. We committed you to 2 cents. There's nothing we can do about it setting up here today. Those notes are sold. What we can do is we can say, hey, we have some swing between where I'm setting at, say, 44.9 and where Mary is sitting at 46.9. I think that the staff, I think that the council, I think there's been a whole lot of work put into this effort to get somewhere in the middle. And I'm telling you here in the room right now, I've seen more debate, I've seen more collaboration, I've seen more clear thought, I've seen more communication amongst this group than I've seen in the last 4.5 years. This has been a spectacular budget cycle, and I have never seen this room this packed on a public hearing on the budget. I think we've done our job. I think getting you guys involved in the discussion, making you a part of the process, letting you hear what we're doing and why we're doing it, that's what this is about. I'm telling you, this is not about $1.20 per person or per household per month. This is about you all being involved in this process and seeing how we're doing this. And I am so happy with the way this group has worked together to get to this middle ground that I'm telling you on the 6th of last month didn't look like it was middle ground. There was consensus by this council to go to the rollback rate. The workshop, that consensus moved backward. Staff was given direction to pull pennies from other revenue sources. Gabe, do you mind going back to that revenue chart, the general fund revenue chart? I just want to make this clear to the audience. Our general fund, which funds all of those services that we've just talked about, it is supported by a number of revenue streams. Every color that you see up there is a revenue stream. But you will see that big, bright blue spot. That revenue stream is a certain revenue stream. That's what everybody at this dais and everybody sitting here on staff can count on. That money's coming in regardless of what the economy's doing that year. We don't have to gamble on anything. And let me tell you, the other parts, which is about, 65, 66% of the revenue stream, is not property tax. And there are areas of risk when you start to look into those areas and see if you can milk money out of it. And that's exactly what we've asked staff to do, and that's exactly what they did. And they came back and said, you know what, if we do a few things here, we can get these 3 positions in. And mind you, to Mary's point, it's only 1.5 positions because they're only half funded. Is that correct? They're only half funded. So we get the 1.5 full-time positions for this budget year at the same price that we had at 459 that was originally presented. So we were able to shoehorn those additional 1.5 positions into this budget through this process. I have to tell you, it would be a disservice to not only you in the long run, but it would be a disservice to this group, and it would be a disservice to this staff if I didn't bend a little bit on my very hard and fast 44.9 position. And I am certainly willing to come that direction to pay a lot of respect for the work that's been done up here, a lot of respect for the work that's been done there, and your involvement, the fact that you're listening and that you're paying attention. And the services that you'll get out of this, I believe we're getting the very best bang for our buck. I will tell you this time next year, the amount of revenue that we're presenting to you today will be illegal without your vote. Caps at 3.5% on the total rate. This is the last year that we have an opportunity to put this amount of staff in place and not consider a threat to core services. Is that right, Gabe?
That's correct, yeah. So the Texas legislature changed rules for local control. So instead of being able to raise a rate up to 8% a year, it's 3.5%. That's correct.
That is a huge restriction. Now, we may be on the flip side of this discussion next year and really looking at what can we do in order to gain more staff. It may be a really tough thing in the next 3 years, depending upon what the next legislative session brings, but it doesn't look like it's going to go up anytime soon. So I just want you all to know that the staff, I feel the staff and this council has worked very hard this budget cycle to produce what you see here now in this budget. And I thank you all. I thank you all for the work.
Mr. Beasley. Thank you, sir. All right. So now we'll open it up to the public. Anybody can speak. It's an open session. We're already in a public hearing. It's an open. You can speak on this item. Each person will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address when you come up. So raise your hand. Come on up, sir. And just speaking to the microphone so the people at home can hear you as well.
I'm Don Lomax. I'm a resident of Saginaw. I live on Partridge Drive. My main concern is there's a reason why the legislature did limit how much people are going to have a tax increase, because I feel, and most legislators and the governor felt, that homeowners, property owners were being gouged with the increases. And I understand that because, and there's a reason I don't live in Fort Worth, is because of the way it is governed. That's why I live in Saginaw, because we've been more fiscally responsible than most mid-cities. But my point is my property values in the last 10 years, my appraised value has doubled. my good, I bought at the bottom of the market. And I understand that when you buy at the bottom of the market, you're going to have a lot of increases in property values. But people aren't looking at property values in this city are going to increase 11% in the next year. I think that's what I read on the report, 11%. So that's an increase that you're getting on top of, unless I'm just looking at the numbers wrong, because is that okay?
So a simple equation for the room to understand. Base times rate equals revenue. The Texas legislature limits your TAD assessed value to 10%. It's gone up higher than 10%, 11.8% in Saginaw. The maximum we can raise that is 8%. So the reason, like we mentioned earlier, and I know it's confusing, we're proposing a tax rate that's about 6 and some change percent, but the value's gone up 10%. So that's why, even though the rate's coming down, the average Saginaw homeowner is going to pay more, $52 more a year.
So
That
for-
makes
the
sense.
law, TAD can only raise it 10% per property per year. Is that the law?
That's correct. So what doesn't help us, and I don't mean this in any way to be disrespectful to TAD, but our finance director goes to their board meetings regularly. Our general area, North Fort Worth, has been undervalued by TAD. The only way the appraisal district can catch up is 10% a year. If you were to see a home in Saginaw go for sale, it's going to sell pretty quickly. We live in a desirable community, and that's a good thing. Homes that a few years ago you had mentioned that might have sold for $100,000 now, you'd be hard pressed to find a single-family home here in Saginaw of any age or size that sells for under $150,000. So I certainly empathize with you, and I'm a homeowner as well. But I want you to know that we control the rate. By controlling the rate, we control the revenue. The appraised value is the appraisal district.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Next. This is a public hearing, so anyone can speak. Yes, ma'am, please. Just state your name and where you live, please.
My name is Stacy Sanders, and I live over by Willow Creek Park over here. I've been in Saginaw for 11 years now, and I hear you talking about this $1.46 that it's going to go up a month, but my property I bought a whole lot less than the average, and it is now way more than the average, and my property value has gone up 46% in the last 5 years. So that $1.46 goes up at 46%. And it increases and increases and increases. So the property taxes, aside from the rate, which you're the second largest taxing authority on my property tax bill here. So I have Eagle Mountain, Saginaw, which has been consistently the same. Saginaw changes, and you're like 18%, and they're the biggest. But again, second largest amount for my property tax bill that is not going up $1.54 a month. My salary is not going up 46% in the last 4 years because I really wish it would, but it's not. But I think that the problem is that we can't just limit how we're raising to just being property taxes, because there are a bunch of other services, and I understand that we want to keep those services low for our residents, but when I look over at the rec center fees for a family of 4, it's $245. If you go over in Keller, it's well over $600. Many of the neighboring communities are easily double and triple what it is here in Saginaw. So increasing by these few dollars here and there adds to the bottom line of the things that you guys can do, which you do a great job. I love living in Saginaw. When I looked 11 years at moving, I wanted to live on this side of the street because I didn't want to go to Fort Worth because I knew how much higher that rate was, and I knew that it was a small city that would definitely add to what we do here. But I think that limiting how we're going to fund the community and fund all these great services that we have, because I do think Saginaw Police, they're pretty awesome. They're there fast, and they're always there to help us out. I have no worry living here, but I think that we need to look beyond taxing everything because it keeps going up and up and up. And my personal opinion is that I am extremely happy that they're limiting how much they can increase the amount that you can tax on every month, because while I know that my property value goes up if in case I want to sell, I'm not selling. So it doesn't make a difference except that my taxes are higher, because while all the other people around are selling, I kind of like where I am. I like that I'm by the park. I like where I live, so I'm not selling, and it becomes irrelevant because it's just that I have to pay more every year. So increasing a tax rate makes everybody pay it, and I get that you think it's $1.46, but it's really not, because it just keeps going up. And that is really my concern about trying to increase it the max for 2 years in a row, because it's the max, and it's kind of not okay, because you're not the only ones that are taxing. And I get that, because I get that your revenue is lower, but as a homeowner that's in this city, I get taxed on all those other rates too. So this just adds more to the tax burden that goes on top of it. And honestly, I would be happy to pay an extra $5 or $10 for the animal services or the rec center. My husband's a member over at the rec center, and if they go up $10 next year, it's fine. It is. It's fine. It's not a big deal. So where we get the money to fund this from seems to be really more of my issue than the fact that we need money, because, again, I get it, but maxing out what you can increase really is not. It's really just short-sighted, because we all live here. So that's my spiel.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, still open. Anyone can approach the mic if you want to speak. I would love to hear from anybody else who wants to say anything. Yes, ma'am, please.
Deborah Norris. I live on Springwood Drive. I've been in Saginaw for over 20 years, and I agree with what you say about, I've been here. I haven't made any major improvements to my home. I keep it clean. I keep the grass cut. I have gotten a letter in the mail from the guy that comes around to check the height of the grass. So, but I don't have granite countertops. I don't even have a tree on my property because I can't get one to grow. So, but my land tax doubled from last year. Went from 20 to 40,000. And I agree, taxes. I don't know the tax, but the amount that they say your house is worth goes up and up and up. But I'm like, if you think you can buy my house for $225,000. Please come and do it. And I mean, I wouldn't want to sell, but you know what I'm saying. I just personally don't think it's worth that kind of money. I do agree that there needs to maybe be creative ways in coming up with additional city revenue. I know city government is all about taxes, and that's the major funding stream, I would guess. But the food truck park, is that going to generate some revenue? I know there's a lot of money going into building that. The overpass thing, I know that's a big controversy. How are we going to recoup some of these expenses? Because I live on this side, and those people that want to get on this side, or I don't know, I had a friend that lived over there, and she said, I'm so happy for it. But I said, well, I'm not, because I'm over here and I'm paying for it. So, but there are just that give and take. There has to be some other ways to generate revenue. And I agree with what you said. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Anyone else? We're still in a public hearing, so the podium is yours, or the lectern, however you say it, is yours. All right, if not, then at what time we got, Mr. Official Timekeeper? 6:39. At 6:39, I think it's out of a public hearing. A couple things I need to say here, because the city secretary kindly reminded me, and she keeps me out of trouble. So the public hearing is closed. The adoption of the proposed tax rate increase will be considered at City Hall meeting on September 17th, which is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. So this was the second of the 2 public hearings for this tax rate in this budget. So the vote will be next Tuesday, September 17th, 6 p.m. at the Saginaw City Hall at the council meeting. That's it. That is the last item. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Patrick? Roger, second. All those in favor? At 6:40, we're adjourned. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.